Hey everyone, welcome. Today we are diving headfirst into the amazing world of miniatures, where a little bit of math can create some absolute magic. But getting that math right, figuring out all those different ratios and scales can feel a little bit overwhelming at first. But don't you worry, we are going to clear all of that up today.
So what is the secret to creating one of those tiny worlds that just looks and feels perfect? A world where a tiny little teacup doesn't accidentally look like a giant soup bowl? Well, the answer to all of that comes down to mastering the language of scale.
Okay, let's just break this down to its simplest form. At its heart, scale is just a ratio. It tells you exactly how much smaller your miniature is compared to the real deal. So when you see something like 1 to 12, it literally just means that every 1 inch, or whatever unit you're using, on the miniature represents 12 of those same inches in the real world. If you can get this one concept down, everything else will click into place.
All right, so to really wrap our heads around this, we're going to start with the undisputed champion of the miniature world. The one, the only, 1/12 scale. It's the most common by far, and it's the perfect starting point for us.
So why this one? Why is 1/12 the gold standard? Well, for one, it's got history. It has been the go-to scale for dollhouses since way back in the 1800s. And what that means for you is that there is a massive variety of furniture, accessories, and kits out there, which makes it super easy to get into, whether you're a beginner or a seasoned pro.
Now, here's the part you're going to love. The real magic of 1/12 scale is its beautiful simplicity. There is a super easy rule to remember, and it's this. 1 foot in the real world equals 1 inch in the miniature world. That's it. This simple little conversion just erases all the complicated math you thought you'd have to do.
Okay, let's try this out with a real-world example. Imagine you're in a room, and the ceiling is 8.5 feet high. To get the height for your 1/12 scale dollhouse, you just swap the units. That's it. 8.5 feet becomes 8.5 inches. Your miniature ceiling should be 8.5 inches tall. See? Simple. But hold on a second. Here's where things get really interesting. This is where we shift from just pure math to practical art. Because just because the calculation is technically correct, that doesn't always mean it's the best choice for how your miniature will actually look and feel. So even though the math tells us 8.5 inches is correct, you'll find that a lot of experienced miniaturists will actually build their ceilings at 9 inches. Now, why would they do that? Well, because that extra ½ inch makes the whole room feel less cramped. It gives you more space to get your hands in there, to decorate, to place furniture, and it just feels better. It's a perfect example of knowing when to bend the rules to get a better result.
All right, we've got 1/12 down. So what happens if we go the other way? Let's go bigger. Let's step into the impressive and much larger world of 1/6 scale. You've definitely seen this scale before. You just might know it as play scale or maybe fashion doll scale. Yep, this is the world of Barbie, Action Man, and all those other 12-inch figures. The level of detail you can get here is just incredible, but there's a pretty obvious trade-off. These things are big. You're going to need a much bigger shelf.
The math here is also super straightforward, almost as easy as 1/12. The rule of thumb is 1 foot in the real world is equal to 2 inches in the miniature world. So you just take your real-life measurement in feet, multiply it by 2, and bam, that's your new measurement in inches. A real 10-foot wall becomes a 20-inch miniature wall. But here we go again. It's that whole math versus reality thing. If you build a chair that's a perfect mathematical 1/6 scale replica, well, a Barbie doll can't really sit in it right. Her legs are just too long, and her knees don't bend like a real person's. So what do creators do? They adjust. They make the chair a little taller, a little more Barbie-friendly instead of being mathematically perfect. It's all about making the world fit who or what is living in it.
Okay, we went big, so now let's shrink things down. Let's explore the super charming and space-saving world of the smaller scales, and we'll start with 1/24. Now this scale, 1/24, has a really helpful nickname, half scale. And it's called that for a very good reason. Everything in this scale is exactly half the size of its 1/12 scale version. That little trick makes it really easy to picture in your head, especially if you're already used to thinking in 1/12. And you probably guessed it, the math is just as easy. 1 foot in the real world becomes just ½ an inch in your miniature world. So if we take that real 9-foot ceiling from before, in 1/24 scale, that becomes a tiny, adorable little 4.5-inch ceiling. So when you're choosing between these two, it's a classic trade-off, right? With 112, you get that incredible detail, and you have that huge selection of furniture and accessories. The big advantage of 124, on the other hand, is that you save a ton of space. But the flip side is that as everything gets smaller, it becomes much, much harder to create and even see those tiny, fine details. And we can keep going smaller. You've got scales like 148, which is called quarter scale, and it goes all the way down to 1144, which is basically a dollhouse for your dollhouse. But at this micro level, you're facing a huge challenge. Making something look realistic is so tough. A fork is basically just a tiny sliver of metal at this point, and a TV remote definitely won't have any visible buttons. All right, so we've looked at the big ones, the small ones, and the math behind them all. Now comes the fun part. How do you actually pick the right scale for your project? The thing is, the miniature universe is absolutely massive. I mean, beyond just the main dollhouse scales, there are countless others, and a lot of them are tied to specific hobbies people already love. You've got scales for model trains, scales for those little die-cast cars like Matchbox, and specific scales for different lines of action figures. Each one is its own unique world. And here's a fantastic little tip, kind of a pro move, if you will. Don't be afraid to mix things up, especially with some of these in-between scales. For example, a frying pan from a 116 scale kit isn't useless if you work in 112. It could just be a small saucepan. Or take that same pan and pop it in a 124 kitchen, and suddenly it looks like a giant stock pot. It's all about creative thinking. So when it all comes down to it, how do you choose? Well, it really just boils down to asking yourself 3 simple questions. First, what kind of world are you building? Is it a dollhouse, a diorama, something else? Second, how much physical space do you actually have? And third, how important is intricate detail to you? Your answers to these questions are going to point you right to your perfect scale. So there you have it. You've got the secrets now. You understand the math, you get the art of making little adjustments, and you know the trade-offs between all these different worlds you can build. The only question left is, which one are you going to choose? What scale will your miniature world be?